Bubba Wallace wins an Indy. Oscar Piastri and Alex Palou are the kings of the open wheel series. Here's everything that you need to know for this past weekend's racing at Indy, racing at Laguna Seca, and racing at Spa. Here's this week's racing recap. My name is John, the Motorsports Enthusiast. Thanks for tuning in. And let's just dive right in. Let me take a little sip of coffee really quick. Black. Very tasty, actually. Some Java. I will talk about them a little bit later. But let's dive into my race weekend recap for July 25th to July 27th. Starting off with Formula One, the Belgian GP. First off, it was a wet to dry race. So this race started a little bit later than we were wanting it to be. But it's because of the fact that there was so much water on the dang track that the spray was insane. Literally was wild on the straights. Drivers could not see. They showed the in-car cam. You couldn't see. So there were people that were like, we should have started the race sooner. We should have started the race sooner. Well, Spa is a very dangerous track and very dangerous. Mixing that with rain just makes it even more dangerous. We've had people die at this track before. We've had people die at many racetracks, but Spa specifically, very dangerous in the wet. So no, we're not going to start this race sooner. McLaren, still the fastest team on the grid. And that's something that I think we need to pay attention to going into the later parts of the season, because it seems like whatever McLaren does, they seem to be ahead of the field. And whatever the field does, McLaren is one step ahead of them. I mean, look at the advancement that Lewis Hamilton had in the race. Look at the advancement. I'll talk about that in a second. But McLaren still was able to outpace the field, even Max, on a little bit of a different, race performance setup, but still able to beat him, able to beat Leclerc. Medium tires in this race lasted and they worked. But what we saw was that Lando Norris was closing in on Oscar Piastri at the closing points of this race. The hard tires were doing a little bit better than the mediums. And if it weren't for Lando making three very costly mistakes, I believe it was 3 lockups, if I'm not mistaken, going into one, that end of the race would have been a little bit more exciting. And I think Lando could have gotten to Piastri. Now, whether Piastri would have been able to hold off Lando and Lando been able to pass him, that's the whole other story. But Lando, what we have seen, continues to make mistakes in these races when Oscar Piastri doesn't. And I believe that this has shown, as another example of how poised, Piastri was. They said even the broadcast, it seems like he's just on a Sunday stroll, just kind of meandering around the track while he's getting pressured by some of the best drivers in the open wheel circuit. That is. So Oscar Piastri, you're unnatural. It is absolutely wild the amount of poise and composure that you can have in the wet while trying to race and beat out your teammate and Max Verstappen. So pretty insane there. Let's talk about the Ferrari strategy. It was very, very strong. I can't believe I'm saying that as a Ferrari fan. I can't believe it. I'm used to my teams just absolutely, destroying and getting killed with their strategy. I mean, I'm a Vols fan. I mean, we know that. But looking at what Lewis did going from 18th to 7th, based on a strategy call pitting him in early on the slicks, he made up, tons of time. Obviously, he finished in 7th. And that just shows you that the strategy, hopefully, I know it's one race, hopefully can improve for Ferrari. Looking now at Max and Red Bull. So Max did have a different wing, which we have seen to work well in these types of races, but the rain plus that wing change wasn't the best at this circuit. It looked like the lower downforce setup like Leclerc had was able to work. And because of the wet conditions, they were not really running as flat out as they could. I mean, we saw qualifying times in the 140s. So the race was a little bit compromised there if you were optimizing for that dry race. Either way, Leclerc with the lower downforce set worked to hold off Verstappen. Now let's talk about some of the drivers who I believe got wins this weekend. Albon, Lawson, Bortoleto, all finished in the top 10, all getting points. Albon doing very, very well. Lawson, I said in my pre-race recap or preview last week that I think a RB could be on the in the top 10. So they're battling there. And Bortoleto, another top 10 there. Phenomenal for him. Now let's talk about some drivers who are on the losing end of this. Kimi Antonelli, tough break in that Mercedes, because that Mercedes is a top 6 car. Esteban Ocon, tough break for him. And Hajar Colapinto signs. Just got in the back too early on and was never able to make anything up. And that possibly could have been due to the strategy and the performance of what those cars were set up for. Obviously, a lot of things happened in this race where the rain and the wet dictated really what the strategy was. And so Those are some of the losers. And so, with that being said, let's talk about the Formula One standings. Oscar Piastri still out front by 16 points over Lando Norris, with Verstappen up there in third, Russell in fourth, Leclerc fifth, Hamilton, Antonelli, Albon, Hulkenberg, and Ocon rounding out the top 10. The battle is still on. This championship is nowhere near the end by any means. But Norris has to stop making mistakes if he wants to beat Piastri, where Piastri doesn't tend to make as many mistakes as Norris, especially in those high pressure situations. I'll take that any day of the week. Now let's take a look at the constructor standing. So McLaren, just clobbering the field. Double the points of Ferrari. And Mercedes there in third, Red Bull in fourth, and Williams in fifth. Nothing really happening here. McLaren's just driving away with this. And really the closest battle is between the Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull. And Ferrari has been the most consistent team out of them, because Mercedes, a lot of it has been, George Russell and Kimi, but Kimi's struggled a little bit recently. And Red Bull's only Max. So there's that there. So we'll see how this plays out as we have some racing coming up. But that's what's going on in the Formula One world. Now let's switch over to IndyCar, Monterey, Laguna Seca, the Java House GP. And let me tell you, I'm actually drinking some Java House right now. Phenomenal. It's a little packet. You can pour it in ice. You can pour it in warm. I have it in a hot cup of coffee right now. Go check it out on my TikTok page and my showcase. You can get it there. It's a phenomenal cup of coffee. Either way, right now, Palou is putting on literally a masterclass yet again, leading 80-something odd laps, got the pole, won the race. What we are seeing out of Palou is something that I think we need to note, not only for just motorsports, but sporting in general. We are on a record run with Palou that players like Brady, players like Tiger Woods, and those kind of names are in this hat. And I think that Palou just showcased how good of an athlete he is. So who are the winners from this past weekend in Monterey? Obviously, Palou. We're not going to talk about him anymore. But Christian Lundgaard, a great podium there for that team, for that McLaren team. Absolutely awesome. Callum Ilott finishes in sixth. I believe that was Prama's best finish in an IndyCar race. With Alex Palou, like I mentioned before, is entering rare air. And I'm going to take a little bit of a fan approach on this one. Joseph Newgarden actually survived a race. Thank goodness. The curse has been broken. I don't know if this transitioned over to NASCAR, because we saw Penske have a great strategy, then everything fell apart. So maybe it just needed to switch series. I don't know what's happening, but Newgarden got it done and survived this race. And I'm glad to see that he finished up in the top 10. I'm going to make a little bit of a fact check here to make sure. I believe he finished in, if I'm not mistaken, 9th or 10th. I don't care. I just care about that he finished the race. He finished in 11th. He was there. He finished in 11th. And shout out to McLaren, second and fourth there with Christian Lundgaard and Pato O'Ward. Now let's talk about some of the losers. So Simpson absolutely junked on lap one. Terrible break for them. 51 got junked as well. Kind of lost it there. But the big loser I want to talk about this week is IndyCar. And the reason why is because we had Marcus Ericsson backwards on a high-speed blind corner right before the corkscrew. For a minute and 28 seconds, IndyCar did not call a caution. A minute and 28 seconds. You can go back and look. I think it's between like a minute 25 and a minute 30. They actually didn't show exactly when he spun, so it actually may be a little bit longer than that, depending on when he actually wrecked. But I understand, and we've seen this in NASCAR. Cody Ware incident at Chicago is what I think here. Looks like everything's kind of flip-flopping. NASCAR's getting the Penske curse. IndyCar's getting the lack of calling a caution. Let's go figure on this one. But looking at this wreck, Ericsson was in a blind corner. They showed Pato O'Ward's in-car. Pato came out of the corner, going up the hill right before the corkscrew, and you could not see Ericsson's car. If you had two cars battling side by side right there, which is probably going to be pretty rare, you don't want to go into, I can't remember exactly what corner that is. I'm trying to look through the circuit in my head. I believe it's like 5 or 6. Can't remember that off the top of my head, but it's the one right before the corkscrew. If you're coming out of that corner and you're going up the blind hill and you're side by side, which probably wouldn't happen, but let's say a driver got a run, right? You would see a car get launched into the air and literally take flight. I just completely destroyed my life. We cannot have that. IndyCar, you have to do better. That is not even, I just don't understand. I understand you want to get these cars back up and going as quickly as possible. But at some point, you have to call it. If they're not moving within 10, 15, 20 seconds, get them. Just call the caution. Just call it, because you do not want to deal with what the consequences could be. There's money loss for the teams. It doesn't look great if you have a wreck, and this actually makes it look a little bit worse. So IndyCar, you have to be better at calling these cautions in a blind corner. I mean, it's just dumb. It's just stupid, to be honest. And I'm gonna have a fun one with this one in Motorsports Anonymous. Oh my goodness. But let's look at the IndyCar standings. So what we're looking at right now is Palou just absolutely driving away from the field, literally. Award in second, Dixon, Kirkwood, and Lundgaard there, the top five. And, shout out to Award for trying to battle up there and finish consistently. But with Palou, his strategy and what he's able to do in the car, that team is just so much better than everyone else now with just a few races to go in the season, that this championship, it probably is going to be locked up. And I believe that Palou could be entering some rare air if he wins the next three races, going back, I believe, to something with AJ Foyt in the 60s, like the most wins in a season since the 60s. It's absolutely going to be wild if he can do that. But that's what's going on in IndyCar. We got the Palou Masterclass. Now let's talk about NASCAR at Indy. Bubba Wallace made a statement. He made a statement in this race and was up there all day. Finished second in stage one, finished 10th in stage two, led 23 laps. He was up there. He was battling. That car looked great. The strategy call at the end of this race, I don't know how he'd had enough fuel. I really don't know, because you saw multiple drivers run out. Josh Berry, William Byron. I mean, yeah, tire failures. I mean, we'll talk about all that. But Wallace made a statement, and like I said in the TikTok video, you got to put respect on his name now. I mean, he won this race. Not only won it, but beat out probably one of the best drivers we've seen in the last 10 to 15 years, Kyle Larson, not once, but twice on those restarts, out driving probably one of the best drivers on restarts in the series, Kyle Larson. Second, Byron's strategy is close, but not close enough. As a Byron fan, it pains me to see him run out of gas again. It was there if we didn't have that second overtime. But again, it's good to see him run up front again, but we got to get that strategy a little bit better. But I guess you can't really tell if there's going to be multiple overtimes. So he was just on the wrong end there. One overtime too many. Penske had decent strategy, but tire failures, though, just plagued the team. Plagued the team this race. Look at Joey Logano. Look at Austin Cindric. Both having, issues there. I believe the Penske curse has now switched over to the Cup Series because Barry ran out of gas. We're going to say he's a Wood Brothers Penske affiliate. He's a Ford. Joey Logano blew a tire. And also you had Cindric blow a tire as well. And so Penske curse moved over to NASCAR. Larson and Hamlin drove up through the field. That's another point I want to make. Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin just shows you why they are the top, two drivers, top five drivers, however you want to view it, in the NASCAR Cup Series. Hamlin going all the way from a backup car all the way up to the front. I mean, could have won the race, really. It just shows you how good he is and that he could be on, I can't believe I'm going to say this, can be on a run to maybe a potential championship. We'll see. But this is a strategy-heavy race. It was cool to see the teams from the get-go be on a complete opposite strategy. That was Penske. And shout out to Ty Gibbs for winning the in-season tournament. And I'm curious, with this win with Ty Gibbs and with the win with Bubba Wallace and the race weekend in general, I got two questions for you. One, should we go back to Indianapolis on the oval as a NASCAR Cup Series or Xfinity Series? Also, Xfinity Series, Connor Zilic, you're a god. Also, should the in-season tournament stay? That's a hot question right now. I think it should. I think it showed the personalities of the drivers that we don't really talk about a lot. It created some suspense, some chaos, and I think the alt cast needs to go away. I just think they need to have an update in the actual main broadcast. Either way, I think we should go back to Indy. I think the in-season tournament should stay. Let me know your thoughts. Now let's talk about this point standings. A little bit hard to see, but we're going to look at the point standings really quick. Chase Elliott, 4 points ahead of his teammate, and then Byron, 11 points ahead of his teammate. The top three and Hendrick right now are dominating this series from a total points perspective. Absolutely phenomenal. Followed by Joe Gibbs, followed by Tyler Reddick, 23-11, followed by Penske, followed by Joe Gibbs again and a Hendrick, then RFK. This is one of Hendrick's, I think, best seasons. I don't remember the last time that I've seen Elliott, Byron, and Larson all that close and that consistent on points. I mean, they're separated by 15 points apiece. You also have Bowman in there at 580, but still Larson, Elliott, Byron, I mean, doing phenomenal jobs there. And this is really the playoff picture that I want to note. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see this. Let me just go to this right here. So here's the NASCAR standings for the playoffs. Denny Hamlin currently would be the number 1 seed with Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, and SVG with his multiple wins there in 4th. He finished 19th at Indy. Wasn't a terrible run, wasn't a great run, but able to stay on the lead, in the lead lap and be able to be up there and have the whole field basically, or half the field behind him. And then you have Chase Elliott, William Byron, Blaney, Briscoe, Wallace, Logano, Chastain, Cindric, Berry, Reddick, Bowman, and Buescher. One thing I want to mention, though, Bubba Wallace has more points and has a better playoff spot than Joey Logano right now in the standings when the playoffs, and also in the total overall standings. I mean, he has 18 more points than a previous champion. Chastain, you could argue Chastain's a better driver than Wallace, has more points than there, has more points than Kyle Busch. I mean, Kyle Busch has an abysmal season. But again, another reason to put, respect on Bubba Wallace's name. What's going to be very I'm curious right here is this point gap from 14th to 16th, because Reddick, Bowman, and Buescher, I don't think are out of the clear just yet, because we have 4 races to go and 3 spots left, 4 winners. Now, I can see Tyler Reddick potentially winning on a road course. I could see Alex Bowman or Chris Buescher winning at Iowa, or maybe winning at a Daytona. That's the big question there. But what are we going to see from those drivers the next couple races? I think any one of these 3 drivers can win the next 4 races for sure. I think these drivers could be locked in, or we could see a surprise winner. But either way, let's kind of recap and look ahead at what we got going on. So for Formula One, we have the Hungarian Grand Prix this upcoming weekend. So first, I got to ask all these questions. Can McLaren keep this up? I want to know what your thoughts are. Can McLaren keep this pace up? I think they can. They're the team to beat. Piastri is going to be probably the favorite to win this weekend. Ferrari strategy improving? I think so. I think their strategy is moving in the right direction, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but I was watching the race, and when they made that strategy call, I loved it, and it played out, and it worked out, and it got both of them in the top 7. Finished 3rd and finished 7th for Ferrari, where Lewis Hamilton was all the way in the back, had a terrible weekend, salvaged it. That's what we need as personally a Ferrari fan. Also, Red Bull's upgrades helped a little bit. I think they did. I think the strategy with the performance upgrades on the car was a little bit off. But I do think that those upgrades makes it a little bit more interesting for that 3rd place on the podium. Could it be Max? Could it be George? Could it be Lewis? Could it be Charles? Could it be Kimi? I think it kind of opens up the door for that discussion. IndyCar, we have a week off, so we don't have to worry about that. Portland in a couple weeks. NASCAR, we're going to be going to the land of the corn, Iowa. And so, like I said before, 4 races left until the playoffs. You have Iowa, Watkins Glen, Daytona, and Richmond. That allows for 3 new winners to get in if they win. So who gets locked in? Who is your pick for Iowa? Could we see a repeat winner? Could we see a new winner? Could we see Reddick get it done? Bowman, Buescher, maybe somebody a little bit further on back. Maybe a Hocevar. Maybe somebody even further on back. Maybe a Keselowski. Maybe a Busch. Who knows? But also, can Toyota keep this up? We have seen Toyota win the last 2 races. One with Joe Gibbs. Actually, let me fact check that, actually, because if you go back and look at the previous races, because Chase Briscoe, he won at Pocono. Hold on, I got to pull up the results because that may be a little bit different here. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, you had SVG, but then you had Chase Elliott, Atlanta, and then you had Pocono, Chase Briscoe, Michigan, Denny Hamlin. So on non-road courses, you had Michigan, Denny Hamlin, Toyota, Pocono, Chase Briscoe, Toyota, Atlanta Superspeedway, Chevrolet. You're not going to count those. Dover had Toyota, Indianapolis, Toyota. It seems like Toyotas can do well on the intermediates, and let's see what they can do on a short track. So can Toyota keep this momentum up? I think it's going to be very interesting to see. So looking ahead, we have 2 races or 2 series to look forward to this weekend out of the big 3 that we talk about. Formula One, Hungarian GP, and NASCAR will be in the land of the corn at Iowa. So appreciate everybody for tuning in to the race weekend recap. Just topping this out about 20 minutes. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want me to cover some other different series, other different topics in these episodes, let me know. But thank you for tuning in and watching to this point. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be putting out these every single Monday at 5 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Eastern. And all I got to say is go check out Java House. Their Java is pretty good. Terrible joke, but good coffee. So tasty. Either way, I'll catch you on the next one. Make sure to tune into my Motorsports Anonymous video this week on Wednesday, my live stream on Thursday, and then my track record episode going out on Friday. And as always, I'll see you on the next one. Ciao. So good. So good.